council is asking the federal government to declare a state of emergency due to
horrific attacks, 700 miles apart, both being investigated as a possible terror attack.
Fears that the war in Iran could escalate.
The war in Iran. The US-Israel war with Iran.
Iran has warned it will respond decisively.
In most situations, people wouldn't be vanishing into the woods. They'd simply just be relocating temporarily to quieter places. A small town, a campground, state forest land, and maybe even a friend or family member's cabin. The goal isn't to just disappear forever. The goal is to simply get somewhere calm where resources stretch a little bit further and people begin working together instead of competing. If something went wrong tomorrow, most people in Michigan would do the exact same thing. They'd get in the truck and they'd start driving north. And that honestly sounds like a great plan until you realize something. Everybody else would be doing the exact same thing. Every highway would be packed, every gas station empty, and the places people think are safe suddenly aren't. So the real question isn't where do you go north? The real question is where in Michigan is actually empty, because there are still places in this state where you can drive for hours on end and still not see another person. Places where the road literally just ends, and these are places where if you didn't know that they existed, you'd never actually find them. And today, we're actually going to map those out. The true black zones inside of Michigan, the smarter fallback areas most people tend to overlook, and a few survival realities that almost nobody ever thinks about until it's too late. So let's start down here, downstate. Southern Michigan, Detroit, Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, Macomb, and St. Clair counties, where I'm from. This is where most of the state actually lives. If something ever went wrong, this is where millions of people would actually start moving from, and most of them would be heading in the exact same direction. They'd be heading north. Everybody in Michigan always says the same exact thing. In times of crisis, just go north. But there's a problem with this plan. There are only a handful of highways feeding the Mackinac Bridge. If panic ever hit, that bridge becomes the biggest chokehold point across the Midwest. Thousands of cars, one direction, and nowhere to turn around. Gas stations would be empty within hours, and traffic would stack up for miles on end. So instead of asking where north is, the better question is to ask where empty is. Now watch what happens as we move upstate. The first real drop in population actually happens in the northern lower peninsula. Places like Alcona County, Oscoda, and the land south of Alpena. Long stretches of forest, small towns, and a lot of space between houses. You're still close enough to fuel and groceries within about 30 minutes or so, but far enough away that things can get quiet fast. It's the isolation with a lifeline. Now let's keep going north. This is where Michigan starts getting bigger than most people tend to expect. Large sections of state forest, thousands of acres of public land, and roads that simply just disappear into the woods. And if you cross the Mackinac Bridge, the numbers change dramatically. Michigan's Upper Peninsula is almost the size of Connecticut, with fewer than 300,000 people. That's when you start reaching true isolation. Baraga County, they call it the icebox. 300 inches of snow each year. 45 miles from the nearest hospital. If your truck breaks down here, you're spending the night with the wilderness. Now, further west, you'll find areas like Deadstream Swamp with no roads, no towns, accessed by foot or by boat only. And then there's the strangest place of all, Keweenaw Point, the literal end of the road in Michigan. There's nowhere else to go here after this, just Lake Superior and pure Michigan silence. Now, earlier I mentioned there's one part of Michigan that almost nobody talks about, and it might actually be the smartest option in the state in the event of some type of crisis. But before we get to that, there's something important that you need to understand. Up until this point, this sounds a little bit intense, like we're talking about disappearing into the wilderness forever. But that's not really what the point of this video is. Michigan actually has one of the best natural safety nets in the entire country. Fresh water almost everywhere, 4 real seasons, massive forests, and once you leave the cities, a surprisingly low population. In most situations, people wouldn't be vanishing into the woods. They'd simply just be relocating temporarily to quieter places. A small town, campground, state forest land, and maybe even a friend or family member's cabin. The goal isn't to just disappear forever. The goal is to simply get somewhere calm where resources stretch a little bit further and people people begin working together instead of competing. So let's run a real quick thought experiment. It's 7:30 p.m. The news is chaos. Cell service starts to get spotty. And you decided you're leaving tonight. You've got about 15 minutes to grab what actually matters. You're not building a cabin. You're not drilling a well. You're just trying to stay warm, dry, and functional for the first night or two at least. And in Michigan, that changes the survival math completely. Most survival advice online assumes warmer climates. Michigan is completely different. Cold rain, wet ground, and heavy cloud cover. In this state, staying dry matters more than almost anything else. A heavy tarp and some paracord can turn almost any space into an actual shelter. A wool blanket or sleeping bag traps heat even when the air is damp. And a small camping stove lets you warm up your food or boil water when temperatures begin to drop. And a little headlamp becomes critical because Michigan winters means very long nights. And finally, water filtration. Michigan has water almost everywhere, but you still need a safe way to actually drink it. And if you've ever camped in Michigan during black fly season, you already know bug spray might be the most important item of all. Now, if someone ever did decide to stay somewhere a little bit longer, there's another factor people rarely ever think about, and that's the grounds. Michigan actually has two very different types of soil. Yes, there's many others, but bear with me. The gray clay and the Kalkaska sand. Gray clay holds water like a bowl. Roads turn to mud and septic systems tend to struggle, and everything stays wet for months. Then Kalkaska sand is the complete opposite. It drains fast, it stays dry, and that's why so many cabins up north sit on that yellow sandy soil that glaciers left behind so long ago. Now, remember earlier when we mentioned there is one part of Michigan almost nobody tends to talk about? Here that is, the northeastern corridor between Alpena and Oscoda. Low population, large sections of forest, access to water, and still close enough to small towns for supplies. It's one of the quietest stretches of the lower peninsula, and most people drive right past it without ever even realizing. Michigan rewards the prepared, it punishes the romantic. Hopefully, none of us ever need this information at all, but every Michigan family should probably know this map a little bit. So now I'm a little bit curious, guys. If you had 12 hours to leave the city and leave where you live, where would you go? Drop it in the comments for me, because the smartest places are usually the ones nobody ever mentions.